Okay. All right. Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. Today we're cooking a Japanese fried chicken dish called chicken katsu. It's a pretty common, probably one of the most common fried chicken dishes that you'll find in like Japanese cuisine. And what it is essentially is a fried chicken cutlet that we're going to use some chicken breast for, that we're going to fillet very, very thinly. And then we're going to bread it in some panko breadcrumb. And then I believe we're doing a double fry. Double frying? Yeah, double frying. Then we're going to do a double fry on this particular version of chicken katsu. If you have never come across a chicken katsu before, I would be surprised if you've never come across chicken katsu before. But probably the more commonly found version is actually a pork version called pork tonkatsu, or tonkatsu, which is the exact same thing except it would use a pork cutlet instead of a chicken cutlet. So we're going to run through some of the my favorite things to do with a chicken katsu, and then we're going to dive right in. We're also going to be making a katsu sauce from scratch today too, using a couple of my favorite ingredients, and also diving into why you cannot make katsu sauce without ketchup. And there's actually some very interesting history behind that I found out pretty recently too. So we're going to get to all of that stuff shortly. So if you have any questions, feel free and drop your questions in the chat. I don't know everything about chicken katsu, but I know lots of stuff. So hopefully I can be helpful or informative, or at the very least fun to watch. As always, pretty much everything that we cook on stream, I'd say like 95% of everything that we cook on stream, has a recipe video that goes along with it. In those recipes, I tend to move a little bit slower and kind of definitely don't tangent quite as much when I talk through the recipe, and just generally give a little bit more insight as to like how the recipes are assembled, and like why I do certain things and why I leave some stuff out, and like where the inspirations for the things that I'm doing is coming from. So. If you're interested in stuff like that, definitely hop over to the YouTube and check those out. Those always live over on the YouTube channel, so if you're watching on Reddit, it's the YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, it's the channel you're already on. You did it. Good job. What else can I say? Oh yeah, in addition to all of the recipes, that's where all of the live streams also live too. So if you're trying to figure out what I'm going to be cooking next, there's a whole schedule of all the live streams. So that's where we currently live stream. That's the thing going on behind me. So yeah, that's a good place to go if you're trying to keep track of all of the things that are coming up, and just generally lots of fun stuff going on over there. We're working our way to 4,000 subs by the end of the month, so if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, please hop over and subscribe. Robert, how will we bread the chicken? Oh, good question. Yeah, so today what we're going to be doing, make sure I got this right. The the fried chicken katsu process happens in 3 stages. We're going to start by dredging it in a little bit of AP flour, so it has a lot of gluten in it. We're going to dredge it in some flour, and then we're going to do an egg wash following that. And then after that, we're going to do it in some panko breadcrumb. So the panko breadcrumb, if you're not familiar, is probably the most iconic part of a chicken katsu, because it's where all of the texture comes from. So that really it's kind of like prickly, almost, texture that comes from chicken katsu, or tonkatsu, or any kind of katsu. It's coming from that panko, so that's probably like my favorite part about chicken katsu. Hermina, yeah, how's it going? Hello to everyone on YouTube. Hello, Hermina. Trippin' Deuces, how's it going? Yeah, Stouse, yeah, how's it going? Hello, everyone. Cool. So, what I'm mincing up right now, this is about a tablespoon or about 1 inch's worth of ginger. It was already peeled. There's a reason I didn't peel my ginger today, because it was already peeled. And I think it was some leftover ginger from, it might have been from yesterday, I forget. I chopped too much ginger up. So actually that's a good point. The reason why I had too much ginger is because ginger, it comes in a lot of very weird shapes and sizes because it's a root, so it grows in weird shapes. Which makes it very, very difficult to measure because you kind of have to like guess. So you'll often hear me say about a tablespoon or about 1 inch's worth of ginger. That can mean a lot of things depending on like what the size and shape of your ginger is. So exercise some caution when you work with ginger and make sure that you don't use too much of it, which has happened to me many times. TDM, oh yeah, hello, yeah. How's it going? Right now what we're chopping up, these are some green onions. They're very large green onions. They're so large that they almost look like leeks, but they're not leeks, they're green onions. And what we're doing here is separating them so that there are greens. So the green onion, it grows in, generally looks something like that. And the leafy green part, which would be these parts, are really, really delicate. So if you have ever thrown the leafy green parts of the green onion into a wok fry, it doesn't work super well because they're really, really delicate and they're pretty much just disintegrate in the wok fry. Normally what I would do is throw these whites, because they're a lot more durable, straight into the wok fry. But we're actually not going to do that today because there is no wok fry element to our stir fry. So what we're going to do instead is slice all of these up for some garnish. But what's really tricky about slicing up the whites for garnish is that they are very, very pungent. So it would be the equivalent of like garnishing with like a pretty, basically like garnishing with a shallot. It's essentially what you're trying to do. I don't say that I don't think that you can't do it, but what I like to do anytime that I'm going to be using the whites as a garnish is that we want to chop these things really, really thinly. Otherwise, it's going to get really, really abrasive because we're essentially just throwing raw onions on top here. So it takes a little bit of practice to get a back slice this thin. But if you're not familiar, just go really slow. We're going for slices about this thin. This is about relatively that thin. And what we're trying to do is really, really break apart that cell structure so that otherwise, if we throw anything that's larger than that in as a garnish right on top, since it's raw, that's going to be really, really abrasive. It will be like the equivalent of biting into a raw onion. So no large slices here. So I'm just pulling back on my knife. So if you've never used a back slice, where instead of pushing down, so a normal chop, go down in this direction. For a back slice, we want to pull back on the knife in this direction. And what that's doing is it's a little bit more gentle on the cell structure of the onion. And it won't result in, so you'll notice there's no green onion left on the cutting board. If I were to push down on the knife, it would fracture a lot of those cell structures and just kind of like smash the green onion into the cutting board, which is not great. We don't want that to happen. So I'm going to set these aside as our garnish here, and then we're going to do the exact same thing, or we're going to also slice up our greens, but we're going to do it on a wider bias. So we're going to do the same thing, but I'm going to do these diagonally now. So here, my knife is, we can look closer, about like 45-degree angle, and we're going to slice very thinly, but at a much larger, wider bias so that we have these large diagonal slices of green onion. And if you've done it properly, it should look something like this. You've got these big diagonal chops. I love doing the greens of my green onions on a bias like that because it gives us these much, much larger pieces of greens, which sort of like have more of a physical presence in your final garnish than if we were to just chop it straight. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, you love green onion. Yeah, me too. I use green onions in like everything. They're also super cheap too. So, all right. Next up here, this is I forget what kind of cabbage this is. I can't remember off the top anymore. I've done this with pretty much all types of cabbage. I usually default to using Napa cabbage, but honestly, it's not going to particularly matter because we're not really going to be eating the cabbage. But it is still super, super important. Also, this might be the first time I've ever used this big knife on camera, I think. But what the cabbage, even though we're not going to be eating it, is still super important because it's going to be the thing that the chicken katsu sits on top of. So without the cabbage, the katsu would sit directly on the plate, and if the katsu is on the plate, it's going to get really, really soggy really, really quickly. So we want to be careful about making sure that that katsu stays on top of the shredded cabbage. How much of the green onion gets discarded when you clean it? Oh, that's a good question, actually. Very little. Well, if it's really fresh, none of it should get discarded. But my green onions, they're not fresh. These are from the market yesterday. And what happens is, so green onions have a pretty short shelf life. They probably only last maybe a day or two. If they're in some water, maybe it could push it to like a week. But what starts happening after a couple of days is that they start wilting, just like a flower would. So you'll see here, like this particular green onion, for example, this leafy part it's starting to turn brown, and eventually it will just die because it's not in soil. So usually the only part of the green onion that I end up throwing out. So here's another one that's even worse. So this is what maybe a couple days later it would look like. It's completely wilted. And basically all of those are things that we have to chop off because you can't eat that, obviously. So anytime I'm working with green onions, that's basically the only part that I'm throwing out. And then obviously we're cutting off that root too, but the root is just going in some water, which we can take a look at. So every time I chop those roots off, they end up in a little pot of water, and then they eventually will start sprouting into a new green onion, like this one. And then eventually, once those get long enough, I'll throw that in some soil, and they just grow into another green onion. So that's it for the 16-inch knife. Yeah. Cool. This knife feels so small now. Alright, that ought to do it. So this actually might be too much cabbage, but essentially what our goal is that once we pull the katsu out of the fryer, it's going to be coated in a whole bunch of oil. And that oil, if we let it sit, is going to coagulate at the bottom of the fried chicken. So if you put it right on the plate, it's going to start coagulating. So kind of like we do with a dryer rack, for example, if we were just trying to let our fried chicken cool, we might throw it on a dryer rack with some wires. The cabbage is serving a similar purpose, but instead of a dryer rack, it's essentially just absorbing all of the oil on the plate. What's the difference between Japanese fried? Oh yeah. So I guess there's it depends on what kind of fried chicken we're talking about. The one that we're doing today is a chicken katsu. Chicken katsu is unlike any other fried chicken I've ever come across because it involves panko breadcrumb. And honestly, I don't think I've ever seen another type of fried chicken that involves panko breadcrumb. But essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a 3-part fry, so or a 3-part breading. And what we're going to do is we're going to coat it in some flour, and then we're going to coat it in an egg wash following that. And then after that, we're going to press it into a bunch of panko breadcrumb. And that's how you get those really nice, flaky and craggly bits that are associated with katsu. Which I honestly, I don't think I've ever come across anything like that in any other cuisine, both American and Asian in general. I don't think I've ever seen another fried chicken like that. So generally, anytime I see panko breadcrumb come up in a fried chicken, I generally assume it's some kind of chicken katsu or katsu. But there are also a lot of other kinds of Japanese fried chicken. So there's, for example, chicken karaage, which is more of a Japanese popcorn chicken. I should do a recipe for that. But I actually don't know how those are made. I have to look into that. Yeah. Cool, so that's our cabbage. I'm just giving this a real good shake so that we get all of that water out. We're not going to be cooking it today, so it's not a big deal. There's a little bit of water, but I want to try it to be as dry as possible so that when it gets onto our plate, we're not throwing a bunch of water on it. What's my ethnicity? Oh yeah, that's not that awkward. I'm a Chinese American, or I'm Taiwanese American, I should say. But I cook lots of different things. So today we're cooking Japanese food. But that's also the reason why I'm probably like most comfortable in like cooking Chinese or like Chinese inspired stuff. So if you see me cooking, like I guess I cook a lot of Thai food lately because we've been doing a lot of noodles. But generally, when you see me doing other things that are outside of my comfort zone, probably has a lot of inspiration from Chinese wok frying because it's what I'm most comfortable doing and like familiar with. You watch the gift recipes, yeah, cool. Be motivated, that's cool, yeah. The gift recipes are super fun. I've been doing those for almost a year now. We started doing like longer form recipes. So if you're familiar with the gift recipes, definitely go to the YouTube channel and check out some of the longer form recipes too, because they have a lot more information than the gift recipes. It's hard to squeeze a whole recipe into a 1 minute recipe or 1 minute video, which is why some of them are like comically fast or sped up. Okay, so next up, what I'm chopping up right now is, in my opinion, one of the most important parts of a chicken katsu plate, which is some pickled daikon. It looks like this. It's got pickled radish. Has some kind of association to that. And essentially what it is kind of just like, almost reminds me of like a bread and butter pickle. The reason that I think it's super important is because it's going to give us like a really important like contrast to the like super oily and like rich qualities to our fried chicken. So it's going to be a nice contrast. So I'm chopping these up into pretty thin coins here. I'm not being super careful about how thin they are, but I do want them relatively thin though. And that's it. These are our garnish. They're also like really pretty too. So there's like I think they're really important for like plating. Yeah, I had you at fried chicken. Cool. Yeah. So for those who are following along, if you're following the schedule of live streams, the main reason why we're cooking chicken katsu today is because in 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Yeah, in 2 weeks or a week and a half. We have a recipe coming out for katsu donburi, which is a chicken katsu or a chicken katsu rice bowl. Yeah, I guess that's like a chicken katsu rice bowl that's specifically made from leftover chicken katsu. So the reason that we're cooking this today is so that we have leftover chicken katsu to cook katsu donburi in a week and a half. Which is why that brings me to my next point. We're going to be doing a double recipe today, so we're going to make 4 of these today. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So, super important. Well, there's a couple of different things that we need to note about fried chicken katsu. But what's probably the most important part is that you can only and explicitly only make fried chicken katsu from a chicken breast. And the only reason why that's so important, because the shape and size of like what a chicken katsu cutlet looks like comes from the chicken breast. So if you were to use a chicken thigh, it's going to look super wrong because it will look like a chicken thigh. But what we want to do here is, so I'm butterflying this, but I'm being very careful with how I butterfly it, because if you butterfly it wrong, you could break it, and then you're going to have like parts sticking off, which is not good. So I'm slicing that straight down the center, and now we have this nice flat piece of chicken, and we're going to slice that in half. We did it correctly. There you go. So that's our 2 pieces of chicken katsu. We're actually going to double this so that we can make katsu donburi next week. So I'm doing the same thing here, very carefully. This is also super important to have a very sharp knife for this too. And if you've done it correctly, which it looks like we have, we should have 4 nice slices of chicken thigh or chicken breast. So this works best if you have really, really thick pieces of chicken breast. So generally when I make chicken katsu, I select probably the 4 biggest pieces of chicken breast that I have so that we can butterfly it properly. There we go. Let's see. Cool. Let's wash up our kitchen board. Yeah, okay, so next up what we're gonna do, in my opinion, this might be the highlight of the show actually, more than the chicken katsu even, because the katsu is so basic or simple, is the katsu sauce. The chicken katsu sauce is gonna be the most important part because it's gonna be where all the flavor comes from. And it was also the main reason and inspiration why I decided to try and figure out how to make my own chicken katsu or tonkatsu sauce. Because I wanted to be a little bit more careful with what this is actually going to taste like. So if you don't want to do this, you can absolutely go to the store and buy some pre-made katsu sauce, which is much easier to do. So you absolutely don't have to do this part, but I highly recommend it because it is really, really tasty. So what we're going to do here is assemble some liquid ingredients here in the bowl. It's going to be a combination of a couple things, mostly soy sauce, dark soy sauce, and vinegar, and a little bit of ketchup. And then what we're going to do after that is bloom our aromatics, so our garlic and ginger. And we're going to throw that, we're going to bloom out those aromatic qualities and then put it back into our sauce. So once it's aromatic, we'll throw those aromatic elements into the sauce, and that's going to give us this nice, very, very fragrant and aromatic sauce. So I'm starting off, this is going to be 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, just 2. And then next up is a single tablespoon of dark soy sauce, a single tablespoon of mirin, which comes from Japanese rice wine. It's very, very sweet, so go easy on that stuff. Next up is a single tablespoon of black vinegar. And then finally, rounding all of this out is going to be 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce. Oyster sauce comes from the fermentation of oyster, as the name implies. So it's going to give us lots of fishy umami. And then the most important part to a katsu sauce, and I have tried and failed many times to figure out how to make a katsu sauce without using this, and you can't, is 2 tablespoons, or 1 tablespoon, excuse me, of ketchup. And I tried so many times, but if you're trying to get to that like syrupy quality of katsu sauce that we're looking for, that's coming from the ketchup, and you can't make it without that ketchup. So it's super, super important. And I also learned recently that element it comes from, and the reason that it comes up in a lot of Japanese sauces is because it's coming from the expats who were living in Japan post-World War II. So that's where that source of ketchup is coming from when you come across it in Japanese food, which is really interesting. Didn't know that. So we're not going to taste this yet because we're not quite done. What we're going to do to finish this off is we're going to bloom out these aromatics right after we finish frying. And then we're going to put them into our sauce, and that's going to give this very, very fragrant sauce base. Let's see, not a table space. Cool. Crystal, oh yeah, do I cook every night? Almost every night. So let's see, Monday, Tuesday. Yeah, pretty much every night. I guess I don't cook on Fridays, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, yeah, we're cooking. And then the reason that I stopped streaming on Wednesdays is because I've been operating a virtual kitchen on Wednesdays too. So I do cook on Wednesdays, but it's almost never for myself. I'm probably cooking for other people on Wednesdays. And usually on Wednesdays, I just end up eating whatever the leftover is from the orders from the virtual kitchen, which is fun. Yeah. All right. So next up, we're going to move on to our chicken. And then, so our chicken katsu breading is going to happen in 3 separate stages. I don't think we have enough workspace for all 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to dredge it in some flour first, and then we're going to rinse it, wash it in some egg, which will be our second bowl, and then finally we're going to dredge it in some panko breadcrumbs. So it's going to happen in 3 different stages. The quantities are a little bit loose, not super important, but what's most important is the panko portion. So we're not going to just dump all of our panko into our bowl here. And that's because I've learned this from trial and error, is that the chicken katsu or the katsu or the chicken cutlet has a quality about it where it will absorb whatever happens to be in the bowl. So if you put a cup of panko into the bowl, about a cup of it will probably stick to that chicken cutlet. So if you want to avoid overbreading your chicken here, we want to be very careful about not throwing too much of it into a bowl at the same time. So don't go dumping all of the katsu, all of the panko into the bowl at once, or it will absolutely overbread the chicken. Friday is pizza day, yeah. Yeah, actually I'm a big fan of Domino's pizza, which is probably not great, but it's so good though. If you're not hip to Domino's pizza, you're missing out. Let's see, we need another tray here. Actually, let's just put it back. Cool. So first coat is going to be in our, that's right, yeah. First we're going to dredge this in our flour. And I've read differing opinions about whether or not you need to dredge the chicken katsu in flour. I've ended up just doing, actually we should probably set up our panko first. I've read different opinions about this, but I've ultimately just ended up doing it because it doesn't hurt, but I feel like maybe you don't even need to because I'm not really sure what it's actually achieving other than just drying the chicken out a little bit. Cool, so here's our egg, and then over off screen is our panko. And you'll notice that there is not a lot of panko in this bowl because we want to make sure that we don't overbread it. So there's our flour, then we're going to wash this in some egg. Then we're going to take our panko and we're going to press very firmly. And just making sure that all of this is going to stick to our katsu. What's my Domino's order? Oh yeah. I go back and forth on a couple of things, but my favorite right now is sausage and banana pepper. Domino's is not something that you want to get in on too often. You actually need a wider bowl than this. Bigger bowl. Cool. So that's our first. Oh, here it is. That's our first piece. We're going to do 3 more next. So this is about, I'm eyeballing it today, but that's about a 1/4 cup of panko. And here's our second piece. Once again, there's our flour dredge first. Actually, we could just do, yeah. Then our egg wash. And then finally, our panko. We're pushing firmly to make sure that everything sticks. And once again, you'll notice that no matter how much panko happens to be in the bowl, all of it is going to stick. So all of that panko ends up on your chicken. Yeah, thoughts on pineapple pizza? I love a Hawaiian. I love a Hawaiian pizza. I know it's a very divisive topic, but I love Hawaiian pizza because I love pineapple on pizza. I'm not a huge fan though of Canadian bacon on pizza or Canadian or like ham on pizza. So I love a good like pineapple and pepperoni pizza, but I'm not a huge fan of that like weird like fake bacon that they throw on pizza. Yeah, it's all about the handmade pan. Yeah. Yeah, I have definitely ordered a lot of late night Domino's. Yeah. Alright, so that's our third, and here's our last one. So one more time, here's our flour dredge. Followed by our egg wash. Followed finally by our panko. Once again, we're pushing firmly. Bacon and pineapple, yeah, that's my go-to. Bacon and pineapple, I love like a pepperoni and pineapple. None of that Canadian bacon though. Cool. So there's our finished breading. And then what we're going to do is throw these in the fryer twice. So we're going to do a quick double fry on these. And I think that's it, yeah. Let's head over to the stove. Alright, over on the stove I have some fryer oil. This is actually, I think we're using corn oil today because it was cheap. And what we're looking for, we're aiming for a little past 350, so I'm going to go for like 360, 365. And that's just going to accommodate for the oil. It's going to drop in temperature as soon as we throw stuff in. So we want to be careful of a couple of things. The main thing that we want to watch out for is that when you're working with panko, a little bit of it is bound to come off in the fryer. So every time that we throw that piece of chicken in, we want to be sure that if something comes off, we pick that stuff out of the oil. Otherwise, it will eventually just stick to whatever it is that you're frying, and then you're going to get burnt flakes stuck to your fried chicken. So we don't want that to happen. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so we're aiming for 360. We're at about 330 right now, so I'm going to let that heat up a little bit. In the meantime, hello to everyone just tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Wu Can Cook. If this is your first time tuning in, we're here streaming every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST, with new recipes out on the YouTube channel every Friday. So this coming Friday, as in that's tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a Korean dish that's it's like a sweet glazed potato called gamjajorim, and it's inspired by the movie Stowaway. So I was watching Stowaway recently, and I noticed that Stowaway is it's basically a space movie where Daniel Day-Kim plays an astronaut, and I noticed that he was eating all of his space food out of a bag with chopsticks, and it got me wondering what kind of food do you eat in space with chopsticks? And we did some potatoes, so that's coming up. That's coming up tomorrow. We're gonna kind of dive into like what makes gamjajorim so useful for putting in the space bag. Those new recipes, they come out over on the YouTube channel every Friday, and almost always, depending on I guess it depends on what we're cooking, but almost always what we cook in the recipe will come up on a live stream the following Monday. So this coming Monday next week, we'll also be cooking that one live, so you can check it out and cook along with me if you want. Yeah. Cool, yeah, so if you haven't checked those recipes out, definitely hop over to the YouTube channel next once we finish up. And check out some of those recipes. They're out every Friday. We're also working our way to 4,000 subs by the end of the month, so if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, please hop over and subscribe. Lots of fun stuff coming up. Cool. I would like this to heat up faster. We're eating some Russian. Oh, cool, yeah. It's probably like morning time in Russia right now. So yeah, that's essentially probably good question. So essentially, what we're doing is just cooking for dinner. That's basically why every time that I'm streaming, I'm essentially just making dinner for myself. That's the other thing that I'll point out is the reason that we're making. So there's, I guess, the first reason that we're making chicken katsu tonight is because I want to eat chicken katsu. But the other reason why we're making chicken katsu is because in a week and a half, I think in 2 weeks actually, so not this Friday but next Friday, we're coming out with a recipe for a chicken katsu donburi, which is a chicken katsu bowl, so like a rice bowl, specifically made with leftover chicken katsu. So the reason that we're making this today is so that we have leftover chicken katsu to make katsu donburi next week. So that recipe, it's coming out next Friday, and then we're actually going to be making that katsu donburi live on the following Monday. So if you want to check out like all of the different things that we're going to do with this chicken katsu, definitely hop over to the YouTube channel and check out the schedule of live streams, because there's a whole schedule of like what we're going to be doing and when all of those things are coming. And that's basically the main reason why we're cooking this today, other than the fact that it's really delicious and I want to eat it. Early morning, yeah, that's crazy. It's like dinner time here. I guess that's not crazy, that's just how time works. Well. All right, so let's do this. So I'm gonna do these carefully one at a time because I want to be very careful with how hot my fryer gets. So we're very gently laying that in. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna flip that over halfway through its fry. So that will probably go for, I think we're aiming for 3 minutes. Yeah, 3 minutes. So we're gonna let that go for about 3 minutes in total. And we're gonna flip it over halfway through. So if you're not sure, I usually have just been eyeballing these because I've gotten pretty good at eyeballing katsu. But if you're not sure, what we're looking for is 160 F internal. So get your meat thermometers out and make sure if you want that it is fully cooked inside. But definitely, if you have done your fillet, so your butterfly properly, you should have a fairly thin piece of chicken. Which means that it should cook all the way through without a problem. If you didn't do it correctly, if it is too thick, then it will definitely have trouble. So very, very important when you're doing those butterflies to be very careful and make sure that it is properly cut in half and it's not, one side isn't too thick, otherwise it's not going to cook evenly. Yeah. Cool. On my to-do list is pick up a spider and stop using tongs in the deep fry. Yeah. So one of the other reasons why it's super important to flip this over is because if it sinks to the bottom, it will eventually make contact with the bottom of the wok, which is not good. So we want to make sure that that thing is not making contact with the wok, otherwise whatever it's touching will burn. So we don't want that either. Yeah. So I just flipped it over, and then we're going to keep an eye on that. Probably going to get a meat thermometer out and check. But what we're looking for is 160 inside to make sure that it's cooked all the way through. Yeah. Cool. Johnson, oh, am I in the east or west? Yeah, we're actually, so I'm in Oakland, California, so I'm in the West Coast. Yeah, so that's also, if you've ever checked out the YouTube channel, that's why there's so many Bay Area restaurant hacks, because we basically been doing a lot of dishes that are inspired by restaurants here in the San Francisco Bay Area. So this particular recipe, the recipe for this chicken katsu, is based off of a chicken katsu that you can find in Oakland from a restaurant called Shogun. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, cool. Do I have a gun? No, I don't have a gun, but it has been getting pretty dangerous lately. A lot of like petty theft out here. Cool. All right. This looks nearly there. And I'm keeping a close eye on my thermometer in the fryer oil. We're making sure that our fryer is circling around 350. So right now it's at like 340 something. So I just turned it up a little bit. We're generally just going to keep riding that fire of our fryer to make sure that it sticks right around that world of 350 or so. If it starts dipping too low, so if it gets below 300 or so, then we're going to start running into problems where it's not going to be super crispy, or we're going to have trouble keeping things cooked all the way through because we're not cooking on high enough heat. So let's pull this out. Come on back. There you are. So here's our first piece. Where's my thermometer? I don't remember where I put the meat thermometer. There it is. So let's check it out. I'm probably not going to do this for every piece, but I'm pretty sure this is going to be under still. Yeah, this is circling around like 130. Yeah, it's probably like, this is going to keep going, but I think we're at like 130 or so. So I'm going to put this back in. We're going to let it go for a little bit longer. Go back over and take a look. Your mouth is watering. Yeah, my mouth is watering too. I'm pretty much ready to eat it already. But patience. Be patient. Yeah. Cool. So right now our chicken is at like about 130, 140. So I'm putting that back in the fry. I know that the comfortable, I think the FDA temperature for doneness for chicken is 160. It actually might be 165. But I actually think that chicken breast tastes a little bit better when it's not actually there. I usually like to shoot for closer to like 140, 145, sometimes closer to 150-ish, somewhere around there, which technically is undercooked. But I actually think it's going to be a lot more tender and just tastier, a lot juicier if it's a little bit undercooked, which is, if we were in a restaurant, technically illegal, but we're not in a restaurant, so. All right. Now let's check these out. I'm feeling pretty confident. I'm gonna drop this one in. Cool. Take a look one more time. Anytime that you're checking the temperature of your meat, make sure that you're putting it in the thickest part of it, otherwise you could get a poor reading. Yeah. Cool. So where we are, so see, this is circling at about so we're at 145 right now. This will probably come up all the way to 150 or so, which is good enough for me. I think that's going to be right where I want it, right around 150. If we were trying to be super food safe, we're actually supposed to aim for 165. But I actually think that's going to give us a little bit more of a dry piece of fried chicken, which is not good. So I like to undershoot it. I've never had food poisoning issues with that, but do what you got to do. All right, back over here. So back over on the stove, I have my second cutlet going. We're going to let that go for another 3-4 minutes. And then we should be almost there. Yeah. Cool. Hello to everyone just tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your first time catching one of these streams, we're here every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday with new recipes out every Friday. So this coming Friday and tomorrow, we're coming out with a gamjadorum, which is a Korean braised potato. It's one of the dishes that you get in like small appetizers. You call them banchan. So if you've ever been to Korean barbecue, been to a Korean barbecue restaurant, before the barbecue comes out, there's about like 10 to 12 small plate dishes that come out. And that usually includes like things like kimchi or japchae or like bean sprouts, small appetizers, which are intended to be eaten with the meat. One of those is a braised potato, which has always been one of my favorite things. So we did a recipe for that. It's actually inspired. The reason that it actually came up initially is because every Thursday, or not every Thursday, but many of the Thursday streams, we do a thing which is called "Who Can Cook Whatever You Tell Me," and essentially what we've been doing is taking polls over on the YouTube channel of all of the things in my refrigerator, and then asking people what you want me to put into a wok fry, and then cooking something based off of what those ingredients are. So we've been taking polls, whatever the highest 5 things are rated, and then I'll assemble a recipe based off of whatever those 5 things are. So a couple of weeks, maybe a month ago or so, we did one of those, and one of the things that I cooked was a first attempt at what that dish is, which is a gamjadorum. Because folks asked me to put a russet potato into a wok fry, and the only way that I can think of other than doing a full-blown curry is doing a gamjadorum. So the first attempt at that recipe was on one of those streams, and it was good, but it was way off because I got too adventurous. We used some gochujang, and it went off the rails. So I did a second or third attempt. I think it was the third attempt. With the correct type of potatoes, and I researched the recipe a little bit more and did something a little bit more authentic. So that's coming out this Friday. So if you're not subscribed on the YouTube channel, definitely hop over and check that stuff out. We're working our way to 4,000 subs by the end of the month. I think we're at like 36, 37, something like that. So if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, please hop over and subscribe. Lots of fun content coming up. Yeah. Cool. Looks really tasty. Yeah. I love chicken katsu. It's a really, really simple dish. So you'll notice that unlike a lot of the wok fries that we do, where it's really, really saucy, and there's like just a lot of like elements that are going in, so a lot of chopping, a lot of different things, many things going into the wok. Chicken katsu is very, very simple. It's pretty much just the chicken cutlet, plus probably the only other really complicated thing is our tonkatsu sauce. Other than that, it's very, very simple. It's pretty much just a piece of chicken with rice. Which, in my opinion, was what makes this dish so difficult. It's because there are very few things that are distracting. If you mess something up, you will definitely know, because it's one of the only things that you're eating. So we want to make sure that we get everything right. So that kind of element of minimalism kind of puts all of the more emphasis on what you're cooking. All right. Where are we at? 350, yeah. This might be a bad idea, but I'm going to throw 2 of these in there at the same time. We'll see what goes on. And we'll see what happens. But off the stove, there should be a camera on. I might put that thermometer. Misplacing this thermometer. All right, off the stove, we can take a look at our second piece of fried chicken. It is looking very dark. I think this has got to be done. There we are. So this one is right around 160. I might actually save this one for katsu donburi because I think this might be overcooked. Which will be fine for katsu donburi because it's going to be leftovers anyway. So back over on the stove, you'll notice that I put 2 I put 2 pieces of fried chicken into the wok, which is a little bit, I usually don't like doing that, but I kind of just want to hurry up. The reason that I don't like doing that is because it kind of makes the fryer oil work a little bit harder. So our fryer oil temperature is down to 320 right now, which is not where we want to be. We want that to be a little bit hotter. And the reason that we want that to be hotter is because it's going to help us get a crunchy piece of fried chicken. So if it gets too cold, then we're going to start running into like crispiness problems. So I like to go one piece at a time, but it'll be fine. Yeah. Real Dirty Dan. Oh yeah, is the band still doing the tunes? Yeah, actually. So a lot of the things that are happening on, or a lot of the music that are happening on the stream, are probably either trace repeat tunes or maybe something that I have recorded during quarantine. So all of the tunes that are underneath the voiceover right now are released under actually the music channel, my music channel, which is called Woo Cooks Beats. You can find that here. Yeah, so if you're looking for that music, it always lives under Woo Cooks Beats. That's lots of fun stuff going on over there. All right. Yeah. Cool. So real quick, we could swing back here and take a look at our finished chicken. So what has happened is, so our pieces of panko, so that panko that we coated the chicken in, it's creating all of these really, really interesting and like flaky bits. So you could even see some of them will like peel off. And that's like the quality of chicken katsu that you're probably is like super, super iconic. It's probably the part that you recognize most from chicken katsu, is that texture. So all of these little flaky pieces of breading that are going to come off, all of that texture, it comes from that panko breadcrumb. So in my opinion, that's probably the most iconic part about Japanese chicken katsu, is that use of panko breadcrumb. And I don't think I've ever come across another type of fried chicken that uses panko so far. So. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So back over on the stove, we've got our second piece, or second set of chicken breasts going here. We're gonna let that go. That will probably take another like maybe 2 minutes. In the meantime, you'll notice that our finished chicken cutlets, the ones over on the cutting board, they're resting over on a dry rack. So this is super, super important. Before we cut into these, this is very important. You gotta let these things cool down. If they don't cool down properly, that breading is gonna fall apart, and then you're gonna have like pieces of fried chicken breading that are gonna be like crumbling off of the chicken. So before you cut into these, they gotta rest for at least 10 to 15 minutes, which I know is super frustrating because it's just like, you just kind of want to eat the fried chicken. But make sure that you let this stuff cool first, otherwise you're gonna have a real bad time. Let's see. Also real important, the reason that it's on a dry rack too, is if we had let it just sit on the cutting board, it would eventually just start sitting in pools of oil because it is just deep fried, so it has just been soaking in a whole bunch of oil. So as we pull it out, you can even see underneath the dry rack is all of this oil. If we weren't on a drying rack, it would probably be sitting in that oil, which is not good. So that's, in addition to a number of things, one of the big culprits to how you end up with soggy fried chicken. Cool. Yeah. Alright, let's head back over here and take a look. Yeah. Yeah. So our second set of chicken cutlets are coming along real nicely. The fryer oil is a little bit colder than I'd like it to, so I'm going to stop touching it and it will eventually just come back up to temperature. But that is also one of the main reasons why I don't like doing 2 pieces of fried chicken at the same time. It's because the oil is working a little bit harder to stay hot. It also takes a little bit longer if you do 1 piece at a time, but it will keep you from getting into the world of like not having as quite as crispy fried chicken. In this case, that second set that we're about to use is actually going to be used for our katsu danburi next week. So it won't be that big of a deal if it's actually not that crispy, because we're actually not going to eat it fresh anyway. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that into the refrigerator, and it's going to rest for a week in the refrigerator, and then we're going to make katsu danburi with it next week. So katsu danburi is a dish that is specifically designed to be using leftovers. So if you've ever done chicken katsu, I highly recommend making a couple of extras like we're doing right now, and then making a katsu donburi later, which is what we're doing. And I'm just flipping those over pretty regularly. At this point, we're flipping them over pretty regularly. And that's to make sure that we get an even cook going. I've noticed that during the time that I've been watching these, that they're not quite browning evenly, so I've been flipping them regularly to make sure that they cook evenly. Otherwise, we're gonna have weird little spots where it's not quite browned as properly because parts of it are making contact with the bottom of the wok. So we wanna make sure that if it's touching the bottom of the wok, which it is because we put too many pieces of fried chicken in the wok, that we're agitating it fairly constantly, otherwise it's going to burn wherever it's touching. That is also the other reason why I love deep frying in a wok. You will almost always see me, if I'm deep frying in a wok, because it spreads that oil out really nicely, so we have a little bit more surface area to cook in. Rather than if we were using, say, like a Dutch oven, for example, you would have to use more oil to cook because it wouldn't have as wide of a surface area. Yeah, that's getting there. Cool. So, let's see. How are we gonna do this? We need to make some space here. All right, let's do this. Cool, so that should be about done. Let's pull these out. Yeah, that's definitely there. So there's our second set of fried chicken. We have two sets here, so here's our first fry, which is nice and chilled. So this has cooled down nicely. We've got a lot of rest going on here, so we're going to cut into those. These second ones, if we were trying to cook these right now or use them right now, we definitely want to let this about 10 to 15 minutes. Today we're actually not going to be eating them, so we're just going to set those aside. All right, in the meantime, let's take a look at our finished fried chicken. Actually, what we should do, let's cook up our aromatics first. Cool, so back over on the stove, what we're gonna do here is very, very carefully, I can't express enough how careful you need to be, is in removing your fryer oil. Remember that fryer oil is not like boiling water, it is like boiling oil, which makes it much more dangerous than boiled water. If you burn yourself with boiling water, it will burn and then you'll be done burning. If you burn yourself with boiling oil, it will hurt for a long time. It will continue to burn you. So very carefully pour out that oil. And then what we're gonna do is rinse out this wok. And what I like to do whenever I start wok frying is usually just remove this wok ring because I find that it gets in the way sometimes when I'm trying to toss. But to each their own. I know lots of people when they use wok ring or round bottom woks at home, they like to have that wok ring on because it gives us a little bit more stability. And it's actually the reason why I like using it when I'm deep frying because I want to make sure that that wok doesn't roll off the stove. Whenever I start frying though, I like to have it be a little bit more mobile, which is why it can roll around like that. And then what we're going to do is reheat our wok, and then what we're going to do is bloom our aromatics. So that's going to get out all of the aromatic qualities of our garlic and ginger. And then we're going to toss it into our sauce base. So right now I'm reheating that wok. We're gonna let that get ripping hot before we bloom our aromatics. But super, super important, the most important part when we're dealing with our aromatics today is this is not gonna be like a Chinese wok fry. We can't throw 4 tablespoons of oil into that wok. Otherwise, all 4 tablespoons of that oil is gonna also end up in our sauce. So if we use too much oil in this wok fry at this point, eventually that oil is going to break apart from the sauce. And then you'll have this layer of oil that will sit on top of your katsu sauce, which is not a good place to be. So we don't want to use, you want to use less than like maybe a tablespoon, maybe a tablespoon and a half of oil. No more than that, otherwise you're going to have oil, a film of oil sticking up on top of your wok fry, which is not good. So a small amount of oil here. And then there's our long yao. And then here's our garlic and our ginger. And then what we're doing, just like we would do with any other wok fry, is we're blooming this just long enough until it becomes fragrant. So that usually for me is about 10 seconds. With the small amount of oil that we're using today, it might be a little bit longer because we don't have quite as much frying going on. I noticed that the garlic was burning a little bit, so I just added a tiny little bit more oil here. All right. So back over on our cutting board, we have our sauce mixture, which we just finished mixing up. And then we're going to put this aromatic element into our sauce. And then what's going to happen is, since we just bloomed out those aromatic qualities, it's going to develop this nice aromatic quality to our sauce. Also totally optional, but good last step here. Acrobatic, like, oh yeah, you got the egg roll streamer. That was fun. Except I broke a bunch of egg rolls, which was a real bummer. If you've ever broken an egg roll, it's a real bummer. Today we're doing a Japanese fried chicken dish called chicken katsu, which is a fried chicken that is breaded in panko breadcrumb. What we just finished doing is, this is our tonkatsu sauce, which is infused with the aromatic qualities of our garlic and ginger. And then back over here, we have our finished chicken katsu. Looks like this. And now what we're going to do here is very thinly slice these chicken breasts. Actually, they don't need to be super thin, but we want them to be relatively thin because each piece is going to be a bite. And what I'm doing here is we also want to make sure, in order to make sure that we don't ruin our plating, that the general shape and size of the chicken breast stays intact here. So we don't want to be sloppy with our cut. We want to keep this general shape here for our plating. So I'm starting off, this is going to be a good handful of our cabbage. Let's see. Followed by our chicken. We're putting that chicken right on top of the cabbage. That's going to keep it from going soggy. And then we're adding some rice. So if you've ever tried to style rice, it's very, very important. If you've ever tried to make a bowl, or like a ball shape of rice, because rice is inherently very sticky, you can't do it if your hands are dry. So if you're trying to shape that rice, they got to be pretty wet. So you'll notice my hands are dripping wet just out of the sink. and then we're going to use our wet hands to create this ball. Then we're adding, this is a little bit of furikake, which is a combination of seaweed and a couple other things. Mostly seaweed and sesame seed. And then finally we're adding our sliced pickled daikon. And then right in the center, we're going to add our sauce. Is it. So you'll notice today there's a lot more emphasis on our plating, and that's because our dish is so minimal. You'll also notice that with a lot of Chinese wok fries, there is not quite as much plating going on because a lot of Chinese wok fries just happen on the street because it comes from street cooking. Today, our plating is super important. We're finishing this up with our sliced green onions. And that ought to do it. Cool. Isaiah, oh yeah, totally, yeah, there'll definitely be a replay. Ooh, and you know what, I forgot the most important part. It's our lemon wedge. So this is just a little bit of lemon juice. It's going to give us a little bit of extra brightness to our chicken. And that ought to do it. Let's give this a try. Yeah. Super, super crispy. Like a real interesting texture that comes from that panko breadcrumb. Honestly, I don't think I've ever had another kind of fried chicken that has that quality to it. But also like a lot of really interesting flavor coming from that tonkatsu sauce or katsu sauce. And honestly, like one of my favorite parts about this dish is the plating because it's so pretty. And I also need to get a larger white plate that doesn't have designs so that the plate design isn't so distracting. Lots of people ask whether or not that's some kind of sauce that's on the plate, but it's not. Cool. Yeah. You had Peking pork chops yesterday. Ooh, that sounds really good. Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely have to add that to my list. Peking anything, so I assume a Peking pork chop. I've never actually seen a Peking pork chop, but I'm assuming that it's done the same way that Peking duck is done. And it's real tricky. So the reason that generally when you see Peking duck, you'll see, if you've ever seen duck hanging in the windows in restaurants, that's because the duck has to be cured. So what makes making Peking duck so difficult at home is you have to find somewhere to let it cure for, like, I think it has to hang for like a week. So you have to let the duck cure. And that's real tricky if you don't have like a windowsill to hang the duck in. So that's one of the main reasons why I haven't done a lot of those. Actually, a lot of those dishes require a curing element. So Peking duck is one of them, but also chashu, which is like a Chinese like pork, like I guess like Chinese barbecue pork. I guess that's what you call it. Chashu also requires that you hang it in the window. That's probably the other thing that you'll see hanging in the window next to like either like a duck or a chicken is chashu, which is like a pork rack. And it has to be cured. So if you don't have somewhere to hang that pork rack, you're probably gonna have like a rack of pork hanging in your kitchen for a week, which is gonna be weird. So that's probably one of the main reasons why I haven't done that. There are a couple of shortcuts. There's a couple of good shortcuts that I've found. One of which is that you can find things like chashu sauce pre-made, which kind of feels like cheating, but a lot of those things, they're like real tricky to reproduce. So that's one of the things on my to-do list. But they're also like one of the things, if I do a recipe for it, it's one of those things that I feel like people won't actually try to do themselves because it's way too complicated. And like also you can get that stuff in Chinatown for pretty cheap. So yeah, exactly. That's a lot of work, and like work versus reward. I don't know. It will definitely taste real good. But you can easily get that stuff in Chinatown for something real cheap too. So my main inspiration for that though is actually because I want to do a tasu bao, which is like a Chinese pork bun. And I wanted, at first I was looking into how to make tasu so that we can make tasu baos from scratch. And making tasu is a real labor intensive thing. So I think my next best hack is to just go pick up some tasu from Chinatown and then make the buns from that, and which also kind of feels like cheating. But we'll see. It's on my to-do list. But I don't know, like, is that really a recipe anymore? Or is that just like making buns? I don't know. Cool. All right, thanks everyone. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your first time catching one of these streams, we're here every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST with new recipes out every Friday. Today we did a chicken katsu plate, which is based off of a recipe that came out a couple of weeks, maybe a month ago or so, a while ago now. I think it was still like springtime when this came out. So that already lives over on the YouTube channel. The reason that we're cooking this today is because next Friday we're coming out with a recipe for katsu danburi, which is a chicken katsu rice bowl. It's like cooked in egg, so it's like a wok fry that's cooked in egg that specifically and can only be made with leftover chicken katsu. So you'll notice that I made a bunch of extra chicken katsu cutlets today. That's because a bunch of them are going to go into the refrigerator, and then we're going to use them to make katsu danburi on the live stream in 2 weeks, week and a half. Monday, not next Monday, but the following Monday. So all of that, it lives over on the YouTube channel. So if you want to check out when we're going to be doing that, definitely hop over to the YouTube and check that stuff out. All of those already live in a schedule over on the YouTube channel, also on the website, which is woocancook.com. So if you're looking for that information, please do hop over to the YouTube and check that out. We're working our way to 4,000 subs by the end of the month, so if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, please hop over and subscribe. Don't subscribe if you're not interested. I don't know why people do that. We have a couple of series that are going on the channel right now. This one comes from a series where we've been reproducing foods from the San Francisco Bay Area food scene. So this one comes called Shogun, which has one of my favorite katsu plates. And very specifically uses this daikon radish, which I actually ran to the store to buy this daikon because this is specifically and only a Korean and Japanese ingredient. So I live in Chinatown, and you can't find this stuff in Chinatown anywhere. I looked so hard. You can't find this stuff anywhere because it doesn't happen in Chinese food, so you won't find it in Chinatown. So I went on a cross the town trip. It took me like 45 minutes to find this daikon, and I bought a bunch of it, so if I run out, won't run out for a while. But yeah, all of those recipes, they live over on the YouTube channel, so feel free when you're done, hop over there and check it out. We're also concurrently live streaming, so that's that stream that's going on behind me. Lots of fun new content coming up over there. Yeah, I think that's it. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be here doing some dishes, so feel free and drop your questions in the chat, and I'll try and do my best to answer everyone. Cool. All right, thanks everyone. I'll see you soon. Bye.
smooth as Tennessee whiskey. You're as sweet as strawberry wine. You're bad, warm, glass of brandy. Darling, I'll stay stoned on your love all the time.
Slow. If you come over and start up a conversation with just me, then trust me, I'll give it a chance. Now take my hand, stop, put Ben the man on the jukebox, and then we start to dance. Now I'm singing like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me, said boy. Let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead.
I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart is falling too, I'm in love with your body. night you were in my room, and now my bed sheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you.
One weekend we let the story begin. We're going out on our first date. You and me are thrifty, so go all you can eat. Fill up your bag and I fill up a plate. We talk for hours and hours about the sweet and the sour and how your family is doing okay. We'll even get in a taxi, we'll kiss in the backseat, tell the driver make the radio play. Now I'm singing like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me. Said, boy, let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead.
I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart is falling too. I'm in love with your body. And last night you were in my room, and now my bed sheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why? I'm in love with your body. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you.
Come on, be my baby, come on. 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 Come on, be my baby, come on.